371 The conference. 1. Staring at Emma, who was indifferently staring at him from above, Kevin weakly smiled. Hey. You. Despite how hard Emma tried to keep a straight face, before long her body trembled. She had a hard time formulating her words as her eyes grew blurry. Why did you do that? Her voice was faint and weak, but Kevin was able to make out every single word that came out of her mouth. Were you so desperate to break through that you would reduce your body to that state? Are you still not over his death? Lifting his head up and meeting Emma's eyes, Kevin shook his head. No, it's not that. Then why? She screamed, tears flowing down her cheek. Why would you do that to yourself? Do you not understand how worried everyone was when they saw you in that state in your room? You wouldn't understand, Kevin replied. He couldn't quite bring himself to tell her the truth. That he had done what he did to save Ren. He wanted to, but he couldn't. Who would believe him in the first place? Ren was dead. He'd only look crazy to Emma if he said those words. You. A hurt look appeared on Emma's face as she heard Kevin's words. Am I that untrustworthy to you? No, it's not that. Shaking his head, Kevin took out the wires that were attached to his body and weakly stood up. What are you doing? This obviously flustered Emma, who rushed towards him and tried to put him back on the bed. Got you. But just as Emma was about to grab him, extended his hand forward, Kevin grabbed Emma by the arm and pulled her towards the bed, helping himself up in the meantime. Hayak. Falling onto the bed, she screamed in panic. Staring at Emma, who was on the bed, Kevin teasingly smiled. Thanks for helping me up. You. An enraged look appeared on Emma's face as she looked up towards Kevin. Turning his back on Emma and walking towards the exit of the room, Kevin's smile faded. Thinking back at all the things that had happened recently, Kevin felt this sense of urgency rise from within him. From the synchronization episodes to the fact that the Demon King was going to ascend in 8 years' time, Kevin knew that he could no longer take things as easily as before. This recent event was a wake-up call to him. He had to put in even more effort. He had been relying on his system too much. Now that it wasn't grading him as many quests as before, he knew that he needed to make a change. He needed to push himself even more than he ever pushed himself before. Hey Kevin, where are you going? Right as Kevin was about to leave the room, Emma's voice echoed from behind. Turning around, Kevin briefly glanced at Emma before answering. I'm going back to the dorm. To do what? Halting his footsteps right at the door, Kevin extended his hand and pushed the door open. To train. 8 months later. A festive mood enshrouded the lock as a large banner hung at the entrance of the academy. Lock third-year graduation ceremony. A myriad of people walked below the banner as agents and guild scouts appeared all over the academy campus. Their eyes, which seemed crazed, made everyone around them want to run. It was a mess. Did I finally manage to run away from them? Standing outside of the academy building in a rather secluded area, Kevin looked back at the academy campus behind him. With his arms on his knees, Kevin tried to catch his breath. About a month before graduating, a series of guilds crazily started contacting him in hopes of recruiting him. This was understandable. Being the top-ranked guy for 3 years in a row was without a doubt something that all guilds would crave when recruiting someone. But there was a limit to how crazy things could get. But with him constantly being harassed on the phone every day and night, Kevin was forced to change his phone number. But even that didn't work, as they would somehow find out about his new number immediately. About time you arrived. Waiting for Kevin in the area was Emma, who was looking at him with her arms crossed. Her foot repeatedly tapped the ground. Standing next to her were Jean and Melissa. The three of them all wore long robes with the academy logo engraved on the back. Kevin too wore a similar attire, as they were the academy graduation robes, signifying that they had graduated from the academy. Sorry, had to take a small detour. Kevin apologized before walking up to them. Glancing behind him one more time, Kevin had a nostalgic look on his face. I'm finally leaving this place. After spending over 3 years at the lock, it was now finally time for him to leave. It'd be a lie if he said that he wasn't sad. A lot of good memories were made in this place. Glancing at the others from the corner of his eyes, Kevin's eyes paused on Melissa. Out of the 4, she seemed to be the one that cared about leaving the least. In hindsight, she spent most of her time in the lab, therefore she didn't have any attachment to the academy. You don't seem to care at all about the fact that we're leaving the academy. That's 'cause I don't. Melissa bluntly replied. What are we even doing here anyway? We're waiting for Amanda. Didn't you forget that she wanted to celebrate our graduation with us? Emma replied from the side. Brushing her hair behind her ear, she yawned slightly. She said something about, Sensing something, Emma suddenly turned her head towards her left. Talk about timing. She's already here. Pointing towards the left, everyone saw the silhouette of a figure exiting a nice black car. Wearing a long one-pieced black dress that perfectly showed off the contour of her body and legs, Amanda stepped out of the car and faintly smiled in their direction. Thank you for waiting, she said, walking in their direction. I hope I didn't make you wait for long. So what did you want us here for? Melissa said, lifting her glasses up. Before even sharing any formalities, she quickly went straight to the point. It also had to be said that she was quite comfortable with Amanda, which was why she acted like this. Want to join my guild? Amanda replied back. The moment she said those words, Melissa's face alongside the others froze up, only to then relax upon seeing the small smile on Amanda's face. Why, you better not joke about that stuff again, Emma said, pointing her finger in her direction. Who said I was joking? Amanda replied, turning her attention towards Kevin. My offer still stands. If you're not planning on joining the union, you can always join my guild. No thank you. Kevin kindly declined with a smile. That's too bad. Amanda didn't seem too fazed by his rejection. She only tried for the sake of it. I mean, who wouldn't want someone as talented as Kevin in their guild? Brushing the side of her hair behind her ear, she looked at Kevin and asked. So you've made up your mind into joining the union? Yeah. Kevin nodded. Even though he knew that Rin was alive, he still decided to join the union. It wasn't about getting revenge this time, but more because he decided that this was the best course of action to take in order to further boost his strength. Just like they were planning on using him, Kevin was planning on using them. Each to their own benefits. So what should we do now? Emma suddenly asked from the side. Rubbing her stomach a little, she looked around and said, Are we going to go eat or anything? I'm kind of hungry. With a helpless look on her face, Amanda looked at Emma before she nodded her head. I've booked a good place where we can all stay to celebrate your graduation. That's good 'cause I'm starving. Without waiting for Amanda to say anything else, she quickly headed in the direction of her car and quickly got in. Once she got in, rolling the passenger window down, she shouted, What are you waiting for? Let's go now. Right after she said those words, she sat back in the car and nudged them to hurry up. Watching Emma from afar, everyone was left speechless. They didn't know what to say. Shall we just go? In the end, it was only after Kevin said those words that everyone finally moved and headed for the car. It wasn't bad. Getting in the car and staring at the academy campus for one last time before the car slowly sped into the distance, Kevin knew that this was the beginning of a new journey. Hendler Elder Hall. Seated in the middle of the semicircular desk where all the other elders sat, Gervis looked around the hall. Have there been any further reports regarding the remains members of Inferno? His solemn voice reached every corner of the hall. We have located a couple surviving members, but that's all. There are still quite a few at large, but let's be honest, they are nothing but cornered rats at this point. Alga replied from a couple of seats away from Gervis. She was one of the 13 remaining members of the Elder Council. There used to be a total of 21 before the war. A total of 8 elders had died during the war. Casually nodding at Alga's words, Gervis looked at the others with a serious look. That may be true, but unless all of them are out of the picture, I don't want anyone lowering their guard. Although they had taken out most of the high-ranking members of Inferno, quite a few still managed to escape. It was fair to say that their main force was gone, but that also didn't mean that they should lower their guard. Just because they were not as powerful as before didn't mean that they couldn't cause any trouble. Just because someone was cornered didn't mean that they couldn't bite back when you'd least expect it. As someone with a lot of experience, Gervis firmly believed in this, hence why he tried to warn all the elders present to keep a lookout at any of the remaining members of Inferno. Of course, he also did send out a task force to remove as many of those rats as possible. It was only a matter of time before all the remaining members were killed. That matter aside, the reason why I have gathered all of you here is because of the human's request. The one about joining our alliance. Instantly, silence descended upon the hall. Sweeping the room with his eyes, Gervis continued. I've just received word that the elves and orcs have also managed to defend against their enemy. Of course, that is thanks to our help. As they had won the war, the dwarves, being their allies, had to provide assistance to the elves and orcs. They naturally did. This was part of their agreements as allies. If they had the ability to help, they had to help the alliance member when it was in trouble. With troops to spare, the dwarves sent a few elite warriors to help the two other races and in turn, managed to take a huge load off of their shoulders, securing them a victory. They were naturally very grateful for this as they had anticipated a very long and tragic war. After having talked to them and having explained how we were able to win our war thanks to the help of the humans, I briefly told them about their request. Gervis paused, with his eyes locked onto everyone present as they too looked back at him with their ears wide open. Gervis continued. And after discussing with them for a while, we decided to host a conference where we will decide whether the humans will join our alliance or not. Pressing both palms of his hands on the table, Gervis stood up. The reason why I've gathered you here is to hear your opinion on this matter. What are your thoughts on the conference? I agree. Just as Gervis finished saying those words, one of the dwarves seated in the hall instantly agreed. It was Rander. With all eyes drawn towards him, Rander remained calm. Giving the humans a chance to prove themselves is ideal. We have all seen what they are capable of. We don't really lose nothing from giving them a chance. Gervis then shrugged his shoulders. But of course, as Gervis said, we are merely giving them a chance to prove themselves. Whether they can convince us to join or not will depend on how convincing they are. And how do you expect them to prove that? Giver, another one of the dwarven elders asked. Turning his attention towards Giver, Rander smiled. Easy, why don't we let them fight against some of our warriors? Gervis was quick to catch up to Rander's intentions as he asked. You want to propose a spar to test how far the humans have come? That's correct, Rander replied. We may have seen a glimpse of what they can do from Douglas and Waylon. But it also has to be noted that the two of them are the most elite members of humanity. What I truly want to know is whether they are worth investing in. Hearing Rander's words, Gervis stroked his beard. You make a good point. Then turning to face the other members he asked. What do you guys think? Do you agree with what Rander said? I agree with the proposal. Alga was the first to reply as she stood up and looked at everyone present. They don't even need to fight, but they must at least prove to us that they are worth taking in our alliance. Having one more ally can be beneficial to us in the long term when fighting against him. I too agree. Another dwarf stood up. Me too. Then one by one everyone in the room slowly started to agree with the idea. It wasn't long before everyone in the hall agreed. Staring at the scene with a satisfied look, Gervis clapped his hands once. Okay, since all of you seem to agree, I'll tell you all now that in 4 months' time the conference will begin. It will be held in the Elven Domain. Chapter 372, The Conference. Bang. Bang. The sound of small shockwaves resounded as circular pressurized wind gales pushed outwards from the point of contact between a fist and a punching bag. Ha! Letting out a cry, drawing a beautiful arc in the air, the instep of his foot collided against the punching bag. Bang! This time, a louder sound resounded as an even more powerful shockwave swept through the private training grounds. Thump! Following the kick, the punching bag fell onto the floor as a large tear appeared by the side of its body. Black sand spilled out from it. Lowering his head and staring at the punching bag below him, Jin's breathing was a bit rough. Having spent the most part of the afternoon training, he was understandably tired. Thank you. Grabbing onto a towel that a servant girl offered, Jin thanked her. Then putting it on his face, he wiped the sweat that had accumulated on his face. It was only after Jin was done drying up that the servant lady finally spoke up. Her tone was extremely respectful. Young master, the items you requested have arrived. Oh. Jin raised his brow and stared at the servant lady. Wearing a black suit and having long blonde hair that perfectly complemented her emerald-colored eyes, she looked very beautiful. But of course, Jin wasn't in the least bit interested in her beauty. Without saying anything, he handed the towel back and headed for his office space. Sure enough, sitting on his desk was a large box. Walking towards the box and carefully opening it, Jin took out a pair of clean daggers. On closer inspection, one would discover faint lines that spread throughout the set of daggers. These lines gave out a strange feeling as the mana in the air trembled slightly at its presence. The grip of the dagger felt rather rough, but it was to ensure a proper hold. On the other hand, the main body of the dagger was extremely sharp. Just from a casual glance, Jean could tell that the daggers were extremely well crafted. This should be of good use to me. Jean nodded in satisfaction before putting the daggers away. See, clank. Right as he put the daggers away, the same servant lady from before entered his office space. Bowing down slightly, she quietly stood by the side without saying anything. Used to such a scene, Jean didn't say anything and sat down on his desk. Tapping onto its surface, a series of holographic images materialized before him. Briefly looking at them for a moment, Jean turned his attention back to the servant lady and asked in a neutral tone, "If I don't recall incorrectly, you said that the union is about to make a big announcement in the following month?" "That is correct." The servant lady replied in a monotonous tone and proceeded to take something out from her pocket. It turned out to be a small white envelope which she promptly handed to Jean. "What's this?" Jean asked as he took the envelope from her hands. He sounded slightly curious. Tearing the seal, Jean took out the letter inside the envelope and read through its contents. "An invitation from the union?" "That is correct. In the wishes of the guild master, you are to participate with him in the event," the servant lady replied from the side. "I see." Jean tapped his fingers on the table, unsure of what to make of the invitation. It was no secret at this point that something huge was about to happen, but everyone was still in the dark. He had tried asking Kevin, who was now working at the union, for information, but even he had no idea about what was going on. Staring at Jean, who was in deep contemplation, the servant lady patiently waited for him. It was only after she saw his brows relax that she finally spoke up. "Young master, there is another thing that I would like to brief you upon." "What is it?" Jean said as he casually glanced at the lady. "Amanda from the Demon Hunter Guild has tried to get in contact with you. What would you like me to do?" "Amanda?" A surprised look flashed on Jin's face. Then his brows knit tightly as he quietly muttered, "She must be trying to talk to me about that matter." He already had an idea of what Amanda wanted to talk about. During the past year that he had spent in the guild, there was only one thing that had been annoying him to no end. The emergence of demon pills. A pill that essentially acted like a devil fruit and boosted the power of whoever consumed it. It was essentially like steroids but much worse. The individuals who consumed the pill would be exposed to demonic energy, forcing them to crave more of it. It was a drug that spread throughout the whole human domain this last year, and essentially forced the union and central government to act upon it, as the consequences of the pill were enormous. He didn't know much about it before, as he was still in the academy, but after graduating from the academy 3 months back and joining the ranks of his guild, he had a firm idea about what was going on. Lifting his head up, Jean tapped on the holographic device in front of him. Then, swiping a couple of times, he gently pressed on a certain profile and called Amanda. Right before calling her, turning his attention back towards his attendant, he glanced at the door. "Would you please?" "As you wish." Understanding the meaning of his words, the lady bowed slightly before leaving the room. Even though she had been working for the Horton family for over a decade, she still understood that there were some things that someone of her rank couldn't listen to. See, clank. It was only after she left the room that Jean turned his attention back towards the holographic device and finally called Amanda. "How many does that make?" A crisp and melodious voice sounded at the top of a wide rooftop. The veil of the moonlight sprinkled down on her fair and pretty face, making her look especially attractive. With her eyes locked onto the building in front, her delicate brows knit into a tight frown. "That's the third one we've found in the past month, young miss," a solemn voice replied from behind the girl. He was Maxwell, Amanda's servant. "They have become more and more rampant over the last year. All the other guilds have also tried shutting as many facilities down as possible, but as soon as one is destroyed, a new one is built." "That is quite troublesome," the girl Amanda replied. Then, extending her hand forward, a bow appeared in her grasp. A thick and powerful wave of mana suddenly sprang out from Amanda's body as the sound of the bow string being stretched echoed in the surrounding area. Following which, a translucent arrow materialized in between her fingers. Closing one of her eyes, Amanda aimed her bow at the warehouse in the distance. She was about a kilometer away from the warehouse, and it was deep into the night. But Amanda had no trouble staring at the building as her eyes locked tightly on a particular window. Before releasing the string, she softly asked, "Have you evacuated all the residents and people nearby?" "Yes." "There will be no innocent victims." "Okay." At Maxwell's confirmation, she finally released the bowstring. With the sound that was reminiscent of that of a thunderclap, the arrow suddenly disappeared into the quiet night. Shoo! A faint and muffled projectile-like sound reverberated through the air as a blue translucent streak of light headed towards the warehouse in the distance. It didn't take long for the arrow to arrive at the warehouse. It reached the place in a matter of seconds. Then, without missing an inch, the arrow broke through the window with a crash, and what followed after was a tremendous explosion that shook the surroundings. Boom! A mushroom cloud sprung up in the air as the warehouse was obliterated into nothingness. Lowering her hand holding onto the bow, Amanda quietly stared at the scene from afar. Before long, the shockwaves that originated from the explosion swept past her, and her clothes and hair fluttered slightly. "You have improved quite a lot, young miss," Maxwell complimented from the side as he stared at the remains of the warehouse in the distance. "Check if there are any survivors," Amanda said, her eyes still locked on the building in the distance. "Will do." Maxwell's words echoed through the rooftop as he disappeared from the spot he was standing. Finally relaxing her brows, Amanda closed her eyes and tried to recuperate the mana she lost. But before she could even do that, she felt her phone vibrate. Letting out a sigh, Amanda took out her phone and checked the caller ID. It was Jean. Jean. She was a bit surprised by the fact that Jean had called her at this hour, but she nevertheless answered. She had in fact been trying to reach him for quite a bit, but he had always been busy handling guild matters that he barely had any time to answer her calls. The moment she answered, Jin's voice reached her ears. "Am I disturbing you?" "No," Amanda replied as the sound of sirens and the raging fire sounded in the background. I can hear something in the background. Did you perhaps just partake in the destruction of another trade spot?" "I did. How many does that make this month for you?" "3. Replying to Jean, Amanda's answers were short and concise. "I've heard that you've been trying to reach me. What do you need?" Turning her head to face the building in the distance, her black, obsidian pupils directly reflected the raging fire that came out from the warehouse in the distance. "I want to cooperate with Starlight Guild." Her voice was faint, but one could feel the resoluteness in it. "We're short of hands right now and we can't take care of all of the trade points. If we cooperate together, we can spare our forces and save time." Her words contained some truths and falsehoods. Them cooperating together would indeed save them, both of them, some time, but at the same time, the reason why Amanda was short of force was because of a different reason. Jean had an idea, but he didn't say anything about it. "That's a tempting offer." Jin's voice remained calm despite what he said. His next reply came after taking a few seconds to deliberate over Amanda's offer. "Taking care of the trading points has been quite an annoying problem for us. If not for the bounties offered by the central government, we wouldn't have even bothered with it. That's why I'm offering to collaborate." Amanda spoke bluntly, her bow disappearing from her hand. "Are you in or not? Give me time." "How much?" A short pause lingered before Jean replied back. "I'll give you an answer during the union's big announcement next week." "I'm sure you've gotten the invitation, right?" "I have." As one of the representatives of the Demon Hunter Guild, Amanda had indeed received an invitation from the union about an important announcement. Her position in the guild wasn't actually that high, as the elders mostly took care of the important stuff, but once the invitation came, they all insisted that she wanted in their stead. That aside, she did try asking Kevin what it was all about, but he didn't know. In hindsight, Kevin was only still a recruit, so it was understandable as to why he didn't know anything. "I'll have an answer for you by then." "Okay." After Amanda's response, Jean ended the call. As soon as Jean ended the call, Amanda lowered her hand and put her phone away. Then, taking a step forward, she jumped down the rooftop. Chapter 373, The Conference, 3. News about the union's upcoming announcement spread like wildfire throughout the whole human domain. It was the first time in a long time that the union declared such an event. An event that will completely change the fate of humanity, was what the union proclaimed when announcing the event. All TV broadcasts and news stations were called up to stream the event so that everyone in the world could see what exactly the union was planning on announcing. Judging from the scale of the event and the union's words, everyone in the human domain paid close attention to the date of the ceremony as they eagerly anticipated the announcement. Of course, not everyone was happy with the news, such as the Monolith, but they could do nothing about it. Having signed a ceasefire agreement that would still last for a bit, They could only watch the events unfold. Of course, they already knew what it was about since the demons were aware of what was going on. Since the announcement happened, a week had passed and it was now the day of the event. Let me in. I've got an invitation, look here. Don't cut in line. A bustling crowd stood below the entrance of the Union as reporters swarmed the place. Please stay in a single line. Helplessly staring at the crowd that was trying to get into the premises, wearing a black tuxedo, Kevin tried to keep their huge numbers in check. Although he was invited to attend the ceremony, he was still a rookie. He needed to wait by the door and check all of the invitations before he could actually attend the ceremony. It's the Starlight Guild. It was right then that out of nowhere, the busy crowd split apart and paved the way for a handsome youth with blonde hair and emerald-colored eyes. With respect and solemnity, everyone watched as Gene slowly made his way toward the entrance of the ceremony area. Here, there were around 15 attendants, but out of the 15 of them, Gene chose to head towards Kevin's side. As he handed him the letter, the edges of his lips curled upwards a little. This obviously did not go unnoticed by Kevin, who forced himself to smile with all his might. Gene Horton, is it? He said, trying his best to keep his formalities. But that obviously didn't last for long as Gene raised his brow and pointed at the invitation, where the words Gene Horton were imprinted. You blind or something? Kevin's face instantly crumbled apart. Yo. I guess we're done here. But just as Kevin was about to say something, snatching the letter from his hands, Gene calmly walked into the venue. Turning his head and staring at Jin's figure from behind, Kevin's chest heaved up and down unevenly. For a moment he was about to lose it. Here. But not even a moment after Gene left, a crisp voice sounded from behind him. Amanda? Turning around, he immediately recognized the identity of the person. It was none other than Amanda. At that moment, the light from the top of the building shifted towards her. Faint particles danced within the light, giving a sparkle to Amanda's face. Her long eyelashes gently fluttered as her black hair cascaded down her shoulders, towards the back of her black dress that seemed to sparkle underneath the light. She, just like Gene, attracted the attention of everyone present. And just like him, she attracted attention for both her status and looks. Here you go. She was a lot kinder compared to Gene as she calmly handed Kevin the invitation. Throwing Amanda a grateful look, Kevin checked her invitation before letting her in. You may go. Thank you. Taking the invitation back, Amanda's figure slowly disappeared into the building. It was only after she entered that the people waiting outside of the building once again riled up and chaos ensued. Here you go, this is my letter. I was first. Wait guys, please calm down. Kevin's brief moment of peace ended as fast as it came as he, alongside the other attendants, had a difficult time trying to calm the raging crowd. But just as things were about to turn for the worst, a delicate hand touched him on the shoulder. Following this, an airy and crisp voice sounded from behind his ear, startling him. Do you need help? Miss Donna? Familiar with the voice, Kevin instantly recognized her, his face lighting up in surprise. Turning his head, he caught a glimpse of her standing behind him. Wearing a dark purple dress that perfectly outlined the curves of her body, Donna didn't need a moment to attract the attention of every male present. Next to her was Monica, who had dark circles underneath her eyes. Wearing a red dress that perfectly complemented her hair, Monica also looked beautiful. Staring at Kevin with her beautiful amethyst-colored eyes, Donna's lips curled. You're no longer my student. You shouldn't be referring to me with the word miss anymore. Ah, that's right. With a wry smile, Kevin scratched the back of his head. Turning her head to face the direction of the people, Donna's delicate brows knit into a frown. It looks like things are out of control. Let me lend you a hand. Her eyes suddenly shined and everyone present froze on the spot. Please form a single line and calmly hand in your invitation without making a mess. Her gentle voice traveled through the ears of everyone present. Be it man or woman, all of them looked at Donna in a trance as they nodded their heads in affirmation. Great. With a smile on her face, Donna tapped Kevin on the shoulder before turning around. I'll see you at the event. Then with Monica next to her, the two entered the venue. Following this, much to Kevin's joy, the line was a lot more controlled as everyone calmly handed their tickets. It wasn't long before the line slowly diminished and the time for the event began to near. Here you go, have a pleasant night. Sending back the last person, Kevin finally sighed in relief. Too bad Emma can't come. With the whole situation happening back at her home, Emma couldn't come for obvious reasons. But she was much more relaxed now, thankfully. With the fact that her father was now alive, she was no longer worried about her family situation. I think her uncle is here? Now that he thought about it, her uncle was probably going to be attending the event today. He needed to take a good look at him, for one of the reasons why he joined the union was to set him back in his place. All right. Fixing his clothes, Kevin looked around one last time to make sure that no one else was present before heading back in and closing the door behind him. It was time for the ceremony to begin. Bright white lights enveloped a large hall, where multiple figures, all wearing expensive dresses, walked around, observing and reveling in the ambience. Some held on to small, thin wine cups and would take a sip of their drinks from time to time. Every single person present in the hall was someone with a large background. They were akin to celebrities to the outside world. So, have you come up with a decision? Standing opposite each other, holding onto a glass filled with champagne, were Amanda and Jean. Taking a small sip of his drink, Jean wordlessly stared at Amanda. His eyes were composed and no ounce of desire was hidden within them. One couldn't guess his thoughts easily. It was clear that he was just trying to gauge her mind. Amanda too was looking back at him as the two stared at each other for a good couple of seconds. With the both of them being the future representatives of the number 1 ranked guild and the 2nd ranked guild respectively, they had to gauge each other properly in order to best benefit their respective guilds. They were no longer fellow students like in the past. At the moment, all they had to think about was the interest of their guild. Finally, putting the glass down, Jean opened his mouth. 60-40. No negotiations. He only said 2 words, but Amanda, who was standing opposite him, instantly understood the meaning behind them. Placing her cup down, Amanda's face remained indifferent, preventing Jean from reading her expression. You want 60% of the rewards? That's exactly what I said, Jean casually replied. I've thought about it. Although it will be a hassle, we don't need to work together with you guys. I think it's only fair that we take a little bit more, else the costs just wouldn't match our losses. He added, taking a sip of his drink. Listening to Jin's words and staring at him for a good couple of seconds, Amanda's eyes squinted lightly. No negotiations? No negotiations. Brushing her hair behind her ear, Amanda's eyelashes fluttered briefly before eventually she nodded her head. I can agree to that. Oh. Not expecting Amanda to agree so readily, Jean raised his brow. Did you just agree? I did. I see. Normally, Jean would have been happy with this development as he had gotten exactly what he wanted, but he felt that something was off. Well, fine. Since you've agreed, I can't say much else. In the end, he shrugged his shoulders and went along with it. Reading Amanda's expression was impossible. Since this deal ended up benefiting him and his guild, it was something worth celebrating anyway. I guess we should set up an appointment later after this event to sign the agreement. Okay. Amanda expressionlessly nodded. Secretly, however, she was smiling. From the very beginning, she had expected this sort of unfavorable deal. In the first place, her goal wasn't money but the workforce. Because most of her members were busy dealing with the demon pill incident, the available heroes that she had was low. For a guild of her size, it was unacceptable. This was why she readily agreed to Jin's terms. It may seem unfavorable, but in reality, not long ago she received word that Melissa's magic card system was ready to be launched. And owning a small portion of the profit, Amanda knew that the 10% she lost from Jean was worth nothing. As long as the magic card system was launched in the market, she could quickly make up for the loss. In the end, this was a win-win situation for both Jean and her. Taking another drink from one of the waiters in attendance, raising his glass towards Amanda, Jean looked at her. I guess that settles it, we can... Attention. But before he could finish his sentence, cutting him off suddenly, a soft voice echoed throughout the hall. The voice was neither loud nor overbearing, but the moment it sounded, almost everyone in the hall quietened down. Turning their attention towards the center of the stage, they spotted a tall man with masculine features, broad shoulders, a black suit and blonde hair that was neatly pulled back. Faint lightning bolts crackled around his body as he imposingly stood in the middle of the stage. His entire presence overwhelmed most of the people present. He was none other than Maximus von Dexteroy, one of the 7 heads of the Union and the number 3 in the hero ranking. Coughing to get everyone's attention, Maximus's eyes scanned the whole venue before he slowly opened his mouth. I'm very happy that many of you were able to come to today's event. As he spoke, all of the cameras pointed toward his direction as everyone paid close attention to his words. As you've all been told beforehand, today, we will be making a huge announcement. Pausing, Maximus looked toward one of the cameras. An announcement that will shake the foundations of the human domain. Chapter 374, The Conference, 4. An announcement that will shake the foundations of the human domain. Maximus's words thunderously rang through every corner of the venue as the hearts of everyone witnessing the scene started beating faster. Be it the people attending or those watching from whatever means that had, everyone's eyes were glued on Maximus in the middle of the hall. With all the attention focused on him, Maximus's composure remained firm. Then opening his mouth, he finally made his announcement. We've just received news that in a month from now, the 3 other races have decided to host a conference in the Elven domain to discuss whether humanity will be able to join their alliance. Silence. Absolute silence enshrouded the hall and the whole human domain. Everyone, from the people present in the hall or watching outside, opened their eyes widely as Maximus's words repeatedly rang through their ears. The silence did not last for long, however, as all the reporters simultaneously stood up and the flashes coming from the cameras repeatedly flashed across the stage. Your Excellency Maximus, are your words true? Will humanity finally join hands with the other races? What is the so-called event that will happen in a month's time? Any more details on that? The questions were endless, and it wasn't only the reporters that asked the questions, as the people that were invited also started to ask questions, not caring about their statuses. The union wasn't kidding when they said that this was a huge announcement. Since Rin was doing fine and spending most of his time training, Kevin no longer felt the need to check the book. He too had been training like crazy during this past year, and he wanted to see for himself just how much Rin had improved. Since they were going to reunite soon, he didn't want to be spoiled too much. A competitive flame ignited in his eyes as his thoughts paused there. After all, he was planning on having a good spar when they would once again meet. If possible, he wanted to give him a good beating too. The amount of crap Rin said the last time he checked the book pissed Kevin off quite a bit. Everyone please quiet down. Disrupting Kevin out of his thoughts was Maximus's voice. Following this, a terrifying pressure enveloped the entire hall, instantly shutting down the mouths of all the people present. Thank you. Once everyone stopped talking, relaxing his shoulders, Maximus continued. I know that all of you have a lot of questions to ask, but I would like for all of you to please calm down and let me continue talking. I've only said a small part of what I wanted to say. His words seemed polite, and the way he worded them made it seem as though he was asking a favor from the audience. But the commanding tone could not be hidden from the people present, who nodded their heads in obedience. Good. Taking a step forward, Maximus continued his announcement. As I was saying, the 3 other races have agreed to host us in the Elven domain with the scope of deciding whether we are eligible for joining their alliance or not. They had one request when telling us to come, and that was to show them why they should allow us to take them into the alliance. Pausing, Maximus's eyes scanned the audience like a hawk. In simple terms, they are asking us to prove ourselves, our worth. Like a bucket of cold water had been poured on the heads of everyone present. Everyone cooled down from their previous excitement, and heavy tension enshrouded the hall. What exactly are they trying to have us prove? That we can fight? Or something else? Someone spoke amidst the tension. He was a reporter from a famous news agency. Turning his attention towards the reporter, Maximus nodded his head. They have asked us to display to them the abilities of our top-ranked people as well as the younger generation. Once again scanning the room with his eyes, Maximus's eyes paused on a few individuals within the hall. Before long, his eyes paused on Kevin that was standing at the back of the hall. Being stared at by Maximus from the distance, Kevin suddenly felt an electric shock course through his body, jolting him into shock. Throng. He inwardly muttered. It was only a stare, but Kevin could feel just how big the gap between Maximus was. With a faint satisfied smile on his face, Maximus turned his attention back towards the hall. It's like when choosing an investment. We need to convince the other races that we are worth investing in, prove to them that we're not dead weight. We don't want to be treated as cannon fodder now, do we? Silence once again descended in the hall as complicated looks flashed across the faces of some of the people present. It was never pleasant to hear that they were being treated as mere objects that were being tested to see if they were worth the investment or not. But they also knew just how important this opportunity was for them. It wasn't long before the frown of some of the people present started to recede. Then another person decided to speak up. How many people can we bring? Good question. Tapping onto a small device in his ear, Maximus opened his palm and raised it. 5. Instantly, confusion spread throughout the hall as they looked at Maximus's raised palm. Shaking his head, Maximus replied. 500. We are to bring 500 people maximum. We've tried to ask for more, but the elves aren't too keen on letting too many of us in. The noises in the hall once again quieted down as they all understood the implication behind his words. Even though they were being granted a chance with only 500 people present, they were going to be at the mercy of the other races. If they did anything to piss them off, they could find themselves annihilated. How are the members selected? Another reporter asked. He was from ASR, another famous news agency. His question instantly drew the attention of the people present as they were all interested in the answer. After all, many wanted to participate in the event. This was a chance for them to represent humanity. If they managed to perform well, they would without a doubt bring a lot of prestige and honor to their names. Everyone in the hall shared these same thoughts as all eyes focused on Maximus, waiting for his reply. Clearly experienced in reading expressions, Maximus knew exactly what they were thinking and once again poured cold water on the heads of some of the people present. 400 of the 500 members have already been selected. What? Once again the hall became nosy as some people expressed how unfair this was to the others. But it was clear that Maximus did not care about their opinion at all as he continued. I don't care if you think this is unfair, but the 400 people that we've selected have already proven to us that they are the top elites of humanity. Raising his hand and lowering it down, Maximus gestured for everyone present to shut up. Don't worry, as I've said before, of the 500, there are still 100 spots that are open for people to enter. And how do we access them? This time, instead of it being a reporter asking the question, it was actually one of the guests present in the hall. Turning to face the guest, Maximus replied. It's simple, we've set up a small tournament that will take place for the next month or so. Just before the conference will start. The top 100 contestants of the tournament will get the chance to participate in the conference. Maximus's words sounded throughout every speaker in the world as many of those that were interested in joining finally saw hope. Letting his words sink in for a good minute, Maximus adjusted his tie slightly. Now, I think that's enough for the announcements. Straightening his blazer, he waved his hand and made his way toward the stairs that led to the bottom of the stage. Oh right. But just as he took a couple of steps away from the mic, recalling something, he turned to face the mic once again. I almost forgot. For those 400 people that have been selected, you will soon receive a message on your devices telling you about participation. But I want you guys to keep something in mind. Midway through, Maximus's face suddenly turned solemn. With his eyes locked on everyone in the hall, his deep and powerful voice resounded throughout the whole venue, shaking it slightly. If you're selected, you are not allowed to refuse. You are here to represent humanity. Your refusal will be treated the same as treason. A cold chill ran through the spine of some of the people present as they felt the slight killing intent hidden behind his words. Some of the reporters who were only regular humans even fainted at his words. But Maximus's words were clear. If they were selected and refused, they would become criminals. Letting that thought sink in, everyone drew a cold breath. I'm glad everyone has understood the severity of the situation. Nodding in satisfaction, Maximus finally left the stage. Not even a second after he left the stage, the smartwatches and phones of some of the people present started vibrating one by one. It wasn't long before the hall was enveloped by continuous buzzing sounds. I guess this was inevitable. Kevin too felt the vibration as he took out his phone and looked at the foremost notification on his watch. To Kevin Voss. Congratulations, you have been selected as one of the participants for the events that will decide the fate of humanity. This message is confirmation of your participation. You will receive a follow-up message soon. Reading through the message, Kevin let out a long sigh. At least this will save me a bit of time. He had always intended to participate, so he was quite glad that he didn't have to participate in the tournament that was going to happen soon. Lifting his head up and staring at the hall, Kevin soon noticed a couple of familiar figures also checking on their phone. Oh, looks like Jean and Amanda also got an invitation. Inside a large mansion, laying down on a brown leather sofa and eating a bunch of grapes, a youth casually looked at the TV. I'm glad everyone has understood the severity of the situation. Maximus's voice rang from the speaker of the TV. Here. And right as Maximus's words faded, the youth's wrist vibrated. Turning his wrist slightly, a smirk appeared on the youth's face as he muttered. As expected. They aren't blind. To Aaron Rhinestone. Congratulations, you have been selected as one of the participants for the events that will decide the fate of humanity. This message is confirmation of your participation. You will receive a follow-up message soon. A chuckle escaped Aaron's mouth as he looked at the message. Rochefield household. Laying down on her soft bed, Emma blankly stared at her phone, watching the live stream of the event from her room. Although she wanted to attend the event, the only one that was invited from her family was her uncle and as such was unable to do anything about the situation. Squinting her eyes to get a better look at the event, she tried to look for Kevin, but no matter how hard she tried she couldn't find him. Eventually Maximus started to speak and her attention was drawn to his words. Conference. Elven domain. The more she heard, the more the confusion on her face grew. Here. And before she knew it, her phone vibrated. Then a message suddenly appeared. To Emma Rochefield. Congratulations, you have been selected as one of the participants for the events that will decide the fate of humanity. This message is confirmation of your participation. You will receive a follow-up message soon. I was invited. Similar scenes appeared all over the human domain as more and more people received the same messages. On this day the whole of humanity had a sleepless night. Chapter 375. The Conference. A day after the shocking announcement made by the Union, a bustling atmosphere filled the whole human domain as everyone went to their local Union branch and signed up for the upcoming tournament that was going to be held in 2 days. Everyone, be it young or old, wanted to participate. Some were a bit hesitant about joining when they heard that they couldn't leave, but the Union suddenly released another piece of news which assuaged everyone's fears. Whoever participated in the conference and performed well would be able to join the Union as an honorary member. Not just that, they got to enjoy the benefits of being part of the Union without actually being tied down with it. It was then that those who were initially reluctant no longer hesitated and signed up for the tournament. So you've also got invited. Standing below one of the Union branches, basking beneath the warm sunlight, was Kevin. With the gentle sunlight enveloping his features, his crimson eyes shined brightly, making him look especially handsome. Whoosh! Suddenly, a nice breeze brushed past his body, freshening his mind. Congratulations! At the moment he was talking to someone on the phone. The person was none other than Emma, who shared the news about her invitation to Kevin. Albeit a bit late, she had her reasons for not telling sooner. Naturally, Kevin understood why and didn't say much else. Yeah. I think most of the high rankers of the lock got an invitation to the conference. Amanda, Jean, Han Yufei, Troy, Yu and some other names that I don't really remember. Apart from that, I heard they summoned most of the ranked heroes. Not all though. Some were forced to stay behind. Well, it's understandable. Imagine what would happen if all heroes left the human domain at the same time to attend the conference. All hell would break loose here. Even though the Monolith and the Union had signed an agreement at the end of the day, that was only applicable to them. If the demons chose to invade the human domain, humanity would be rendered helpless. As such, the decision to only bring 500 individuals was the best one. Not that they had a choice anyway. Say, what are you doing right now? What am I doing? Lifting his head up and staring at the tall skyscraper, Kevin shrugged. Well, I'm about to leave for the Elven domain. Already? Emma's voice raised a few pitches. She sounded surprised by the sudden development. Well, we are not technologically advanced enough to teleport 500 people at the same time, so the Union decided to send people in batches of 10, and I happen to be part of the second batch that is being sent. I see. Emma sounded a bit concerned at first, but after hearing Kevin's words, her voice softened up a little bit. Okay, I'll be seeing you soon anyways. Since I'm part of the people invited, they are bound to take me to the tournament venue. They sure, Midway through his sentence, Kevin suddenly felt a powerful wave of mana coming from the building behind him. Turning around, his eyes squinted. Looks like something is happening. Here. Not even a couple of seconds after he said those words, his watch suddenly started to vibrate. Lowering his head, Kevin turned his wrist and checked his watch. Kevin, get back here right now. The portal is almost ready. Seeing the message, Kevin knew that it was time for him to hang up. Sorry, Emma. I need to go right now or I'll be late. Once again, talk to you later. Wait, don't you're deaf. But before Emma could voice out any more complaints, Kevin had already hung up the phone. Sorry, Emma, but I really need to go. Fixing his clothes and making sure that he looked presentable, Kevin entered the building through the glass door entrance. Whoosh. Upon entering the building, a strong wind brushed past Kevin as his hair and clothes fluttered wildly, almost as though he was in the middle of a strong storm. The cause of this phenomenon was a strange black metallic frame that stood in the middle of the room. A huge gap appeared in the middle of the square frame. That should be the portal. Halting in his steps, Kevin got a better look at the portal in the distance. With technology gradually advancing, portals, which used to be very rare, were now a common thing in Ashton City. And thanks to what the Union did, humanity now had access to the technology that finally enabled them to fully develop portals. Standing a few meters away from the portal, Kevin could vividly see thick residual threads of mana encircling the air before forming a swirl in the middle of the metallic frame. And as more and more mana threads swirled around it, something strange suddenly happened. The spiraling mana in the middle of the metallic frame suddenly started to pulsate, and before long, it slowly and steadily started to expand, creating a strange translucent purple veil that covered all parts of the squared portal. The veil itself was thin, but it held a mystical feel to it. Kevin, get in your position. Spotting Kevin, who had just entered the premises of the building, wearing a Union uniform, a tall middle-aged man pointed towards a certain area. It's too dangerous where you're standing, head to your designated position. Straightening his back, Kevin flatly replied, Yes, Section Chief. Then without saying another word, Kevin walked toward the designated area. The man who had just talked to Kevin was Mike Rotondo, and he was Kevin's direct superior at the Union. Having worked with each other for over a couple of months, they were quite familiar with each other, hence why when Kevin was ordered by him he immediately got to his position. I wonder how much longer till the portal functions. Standing in position, Kevin's eyes locked onto the strange-looking device in the distance. His heart was beating faster than before due to the uncontrollable excitement he felt about going to the Elven domain. It had to be noted that this was a place that only a few humans had ever stepped foot inside, so no one knew exactly how the place was. He wasn't the only one that was nervous, as beside him were 9 other individuals all wearing similar attire, staring at the portal in front of them. They, alongside Kevin, were all waiting for the moment when the portal would activate. It's done. Fortunately, the wait didn't last for long. A joyful voice sounded throughout the place as an old man with a hunched back and a lab coat looked at the device with undeniable excitement. I can't believe we finally managed to get access to long-distance portals. It's truly marvelous, he shouted in joy. Walking around the portal and tracing his finger on its metallic frame, the old scientist circled the portal more than 5 times before he finally stopped. Turning around and staring at the people present, his eyes narrowed into slits. Locking his eyes with the person that Kevin referred to as Section Chief, the old scientist pointed toward the portal and raised his voice. As I promised to the Union, the portal is now ready to teleport the candidates to the Elven domain. I've already set the coordinates. All you need to do is go inside. Go one at a time and be careful of the side effects as they are strong. Thank you for your services. The Section Chief replied, staring at the portal in awe. All right. Waving it off, the old man glanced at the portal one more time before leaving. This is all the thanks I get after doing all of this work. He silently muttered as he left. Pretending to have not heard him, the Section Chief turned to face Kevin. Are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. Then he turned towards the others and asked the same question. They too responded like Kevin. Okay, the coordinates have been set to the Elven domain. There should be a few human representatives there already. By the time you arrive, they should be waiting for you at the other side. Turning to look towards the right hand of every member present, where a black ring rested, the Section Chief asked, Have you made sure to pack all your necessities? Yes, sir. Everyone replied at the same time. Satisfied by the answer, the Section Chief took a step to the side. Good. Now get into the portal and do our race proud. Once he finished those words, one by one the representatives slowly started to enter the portal. This is it. Taking a step forward while waiting for his turn, Kevin took a deep breath to calm his heart. The moment I step into the portal, I will no longer be in the human domain. It had been a while since Kevin had been out of the human domain, in such an unfamiliar environment. He was obviously a bit nervous. It's your turn, Kevin. Got it. But that nervousness didn't last for long, for it was soon his turn. Taking a step forward into the translucent purple veil, Kevin's figure slowly started to disappear. It wasn't long before his whole figure completely disappeared. Standing behind the portal to make sure that everyone had entered, once he could no longer see Kevin, taking out his phone, the section chief reported. I've sent the second batch already. No, there were no problems. A raging fire burned, and in the midst of the raging fire was a long, slim piece of metal. Its color had turned black due to cooling down. Using 2 metal pliers to grab onto the long piece, Malvol dropped it on an anvil and raised his hammer. The repetitive sound of the metal being hammered rang throughout the room. With each hit, a soft metallic ring would linger in the air for a couple of seconds before it was replaced by a new one. Hammering the metal 2 more times and then wiping the sweat that had accumulated on his forehead, Malvol put the metal back into the furnace, waiting for it to become red-colored again. Then for the next couple of hours he repeated the same process again. The frame is done. Finally, after who knew how long, Malvol turned off the furnace and stared at his anvil where the frame of a sword rested. Black steam slowly rose in the air. Wiping his hands over his apron, Malvol called out to his disciple. Oi, little twerp, tell that useless human to come here. Putting the hammer down, Malvol's disciple turned to face Malvol and bluntly said, He's not here. No shit, he's not here. That's why I told you to go get him. No, I mean he's currently out of Henneler. He said that he'll be gone for a week or something. Malvol's eyes faintly shivered. A week? What is he going to do for a week outside of Henneler? I don't know. His disciple replied while helplessly shrugging his shoulders. He really didn't know. Ren, alongside the other humans, just told him that they wouldn't be in Henneler for a week. In fact, Malvol was there when he said those words, but he was too busy doing his own things to properly listen. How long ago was that? About 3 days ago? They should be here in 4 more days. Staring at the frame of the sword on his anvil that was still releasing smoke, Malvol let out a curse. Oh fuck. This is annoying. Taking off his apron, he threw it to the side and left the room. As he was leaving, his loud voice echoed throughout the workspace. Well, whatever, I'm done with the frame anyways. All that's left is for that useless human to come here to check the weight. Imma, go get some sleep, call me once he comes back.